Welcome to this podcast, Holistic Creators, where we share our unique and universal stories about shaping the future for the 4 Ps: people, planet, purpose, and profit. My name is Swanette. I'm a mental coach and your host of this show. My intention for this show is to inspire you on your path to a holistic future. So welcome. Hello and welcome to my podcast, Holistic Creators. My name is Swanette and I'm your host. Today my guest is Erin Thomas. She is the founder of Erin Thomas Communications, a messaging strategy firm that works with entrepreneurs, business leaders, and speakers around the world to create bold, scroll-stopping messaging that not only gets results, but that feels in alignment with who they are and what they're doing right now. Her passion is helping people harness the incredible power of language to have the impact, influence, and income they desire. She is currently looking to connect with individuals launching or growing their speaker brands, as well as folks tied to playing it safe with the business content and ready to think outside of the box. A Charleston SC native, Erin is enjoying that expat traveling life for the third time in Europe with her husband, daughter, 2 dogs, and 2 cats that think they own the place. They're probably right. Absolutely, they are. I have cats as well, so they own the place.
Right? They think that we are their staff. You know, we are here to make their house great.
Absolutely. So welcome to my show. And yeah,
thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so it's very interesting because most people have a story and they're often not even aware about their story. And you are the one that will bring out this story. So please begin with your own story. I'm curious to hear your own story.
Okay. Then I'll go back. So I am originally from Charleston, South Carolina. I did my undergrad and graduate work there. I have my master's degree in communication. And right out of grad school, I landed the job that I thought I had always wanted. I was at this known advertising agency. I had the corner office with the floor to ceiling windows. I wore cute suits every day, heels, all the things. I lasted 3 months. I hated it. I hated the commute. I hated being stuck in the office. I hated being on someone else's schedule. I hated not being able to travel and live when I wanted to. I felt so boxed in and really confined. Of course, I was only 24 at the time. And of course, everyone was like, oh, but Erin, you've landed this great job. You're making good money. You're traveling for work. You know, on the outside, it looked like everything was great. And I had gotten married a year or 2 prior. So, I mean, we had this great looking life. And I was commuting to work one morning and I saw that there was a bridge in our city being redone, and it's over a big body of water. And there were all of these construction people hanging from scaffolding way over the water. And I was stuck in traffic looking at them. And I was envious of them. I remember sitting there in traffic in my cute suit, going to the office, thinking how fortunate they were to be in the sun, in the fresh air, talking to each other. They were laughing. They were, you know, cutting up. This was at like 8 o'clock in the morning. And they were just happy to be at work, it seemed. Now, I don't know if that's actually what they were, but that's what it came across to me. And I thought about that all morning. And on my lunch break, I made a decision and I pulled back in the office, parked, and I crawled in the dumpster in my cute suit and my heels. And I fished out a box and I carried my box like this into my office, packed my plants and my picture frames. And I stopped in my boss's office on the way out and I said, I'm so sorry. I'm done with this. I'm so sorry. And I got back in my car and I drove back over that same bridge, and those people were still there, still happy. And I called my husband and I said, I've done something, but don't worry, I've got a plan. And I didn't have a plan yet, but I had the ideas for a plan. And that's kind of a launch of my adult life. That was 18 years ago. And I have never once worked for somebody else again in that capacity. I've never worked back with corporate. There was no looking back. That was, the decision was made, and it felt so liberating. I picked up a business license on the way home to start my communications firm. I figured if I'm writing for people and I'm creating advertising for people, for this other person, I can certainly do it for myself. And I just started talking about it. Slowly, people started coming, and I would write for them, and it grew.
Wow,
So that's my story. That's my backstory.
This is so amazing, and I totally hear you, because when I look back into my own life, like I worked as a business consultant, and I worked as well, like you said, in this black suits and on high heels, like traveling around, today Paris, tomorrow London, and then Munich, and it looked from the outside like a perfect life, but it was for me like I was working in this closed meeting rooms with air conditioned, neon light, where you can't even open a window, with having coffee and cookies all the day. And yeah, so of course, these were interesting jobs, but still it was like, this is not my environment. And it really brought me into a burnout. And so I decided I can't do this for all my life. So I went to Madeira, and now I have my meetings at the beach, in a coffee bar.
Right?
This is different, like people laughing and having this kind of other atmosphere. I think this is super important. Yeah.
I agree. And I think there's a saying that says something like, when the pain of remaining where you are outweighs the pain of the fear of the unknown, that's when the magic happens. And I think that for me, and it sounds like for you, was the case. We did what we could for as long as we could do it. And then it felt harder to stay there than to take the leap and figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think a lot of times people stay where they are because they're so afraid that they won't come up with another plan that will work. But I think when you learn to trust that the plan will always come, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, I think it's also something like this stories that are told in our culture, like you have a good life if you have good education, then you climb up the ladder to whatever position you want to have, you will marry, you have a house, you have 2 children and a dog and perhaps 2 cats. So yeah, a little bit of a garden around, and then it is a perfect life as it is described in our stories that we get from our culture. But it's more like understanding what is the individual story that you really feel and want to create. So what do you think about that?
I think that is so spot on. And I think it's not by accident that the stories we're being told, it's generational, and in our parents, our grandparents, life was very different at that time. And the things that they were navigating in the world were very different. So the way that the structure kind of came about was, we're going to share these stories of getting in with a good company, working your way up, staying in the same place, family values, working your whole life. But what this kind of does is support an economy, right? Because if you've got people who are not staying put, who are not climbing the ladder, who are not that's a fear of what will happen to our economy. So we want to make sure that our people do that. That was kind of, I think, what happened in previous generations. And so I think in the more recently, and my generation, the one before it, that we're moving toward this, like you said, individual stories, understanding our own stories, creating our own narratives. And the more we see other people do it, the more we start thinking, I can do that. Like, I can write my own story, or it's okay that maybe how I was raised isn't exactly how I'm going to raise my children. And I think there's a lot of power there.
Yeah, and it's also interesting, as I know you are traveling around the world and you are now in Germany, where I originally come from. So it is also to see when you go into other countries, how is life there and what are the stories they are telling in that country. So that's super different. Like now I'm in Portugal and the stories here and the habits that come with the culture are totally different from Germany. So how do you see that being in different countries? What were your experiences?
That's one of my favorite parts of the way the professional landscape looks today, the way we are so global, whether it's even people living in their home country, getting to Zoom and virtually get into other, meet other people, experience cultures even that way. But for me, it was always very important to travel abroad and to truly immerse myself and eventually my daughter, she just turned 11, to immerse our family in other cultures, to see the differences, to experience them. And that's one of our favorite parts about living in Germany from a family perspective, the European value placed on the family unit, family time, rest, the way everything is closed here on Sundays, as you know. When we first got here 12 plus years ago, that was very frustrating. I would often do my grocery shopping on Sundays, but here, no, you're not. You're not going to do those things. And what we learned is, rather than push back against that, how do we welcome that? And now I don't want to give up my Sundays, and it's not that we have to sit in the house and do nothing, but we are very much a family, and we might go for bike rides. We might go for walks. We take the dogs and we go sledding. It's snowy here right now, and we're going to, hopefully go sledding this weekend. It's wonderful. And it gives you that permission slip to further separate. I'm a big proponent of boundaries and separating work from everything else. Yes, it's great when those blend. I love what I do, so it very often doesn't feel like work. But we have found that the European values help us further differentiate work time, rest time, play, holiday, relaxation. There's so much here. The pace is very much slower. Like, all of these things, I think, can be applied to life and our businesses. That's a huge key for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you're so true. So for me, it's also like coming from this culture. We had always a Sunday like being our free time, and like reading a book or playing a game with the family. So it was, and my parents had their own company, so they were mostly working all the day. So, but this was also kind of a special day, or we had always moments where we met and had this time together. Yeah. And
it's important.
Yeah. So I also see that when I listen to stories people tell me in my coaching, that especially if they are entrepreneurs, if they have their own business, that this is not given anymore. So that they are kind of working all the time. That they are in there with their purpose and their mission, but there is no space anymore for this kind of relaxation, like just having a free moment with family. So they're always balancing or try to balance this. And but you said setting boundaries is always or often not giving.
Well, and I think it's really, there's never been more entrepreneurs in the world than there are right now. The pandemic really catapulted a lot of people who hadn't even considered entrepreneurship into it. And I think that's a hurdle that I have seen even with my clients and their clients, when you have come from corporate, where your boundaries are somewhat defined for you. You get up in the morning, you get dressed in your work attire, you go to an office. So it's mentally, okay, I'm working now. And then you leave the office and you come home and you put on your comfy clothes and you do whatever your evening, you're off work. It becomes very much mental. But with entrepreneurship, especially during the pandemic with working from home, a lot of people, I think, struggled, myself included, because everything is blurred. You know, you don't follow the same routine every day. You don't have to get dressed if you're not in Zoom meetings. You know, you're not, maybe you're in comfy clothes working. Your office is in your home, so you can go and come from the kitchen or the living room or your child's room. So a lot of those lines get blurred. So that's when I think it's very important that boundaries come in. And for me, it was putting pen to paper and crafting a new story around what work needed to look like for me. What days did I want to work? What hours do I want to work? Just because my computer is sitting there or my office is over there doesn't mean I need to go in it. Doesn't mean what time, when is my daughter out of school? When is my husband home from work? And I think tapping into core values, which for me is family, freedom, and travel. Those are my 3 core values. And that's how I have shaped my entire business and my entire life. And I think revisiting those core values to craft your story over and over again is the key to alignment and feeling the alignment that you want to feel with the impact you're making in your business, but the feeling you have in your life as well.
Yeah. Okay. So I would like to understand a little bit more. How do you bring out the stories that people have inside of them? So often we have a story, but we are not really aware. So how do you, what is the process? How do you do that you bring out these stories on paper or however you work? Let me know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's my favorite thing. I am a story person. I'm the person at the restaurant who wants to know where the waiter is from when I hear a unique accent, or on the airplane, I get in conversations with the flight attendants or the person next to me, because I am so enthralled by people's stories. So I think that the first thing is just genuine curiosity with no motive. I mean, just tell me, I want to know more about you. And then being able to listen, like a truly not listening to reply, just listening to take it all in. I think those are huge pieces of being a storyteller. Oftentimes what I find with my work is that a lot of times people will come and say, well, I don't really have an interesting story. Like, I don't have anything that really sets me apart. And when I start getting curious and I start listening and we just have conversations much like this, I start learning things about these individuals. And after the fact, I'll say, you told me you didn't have anything interesting about you. And you just told me that you lived for a year in Thailand while you did, you sold chicken at the market and all of these experiences. And they said, well, that's not tied to my business. No, but it's tied to you as a person, which then shapes your business and it shapes your view of the world. And I'll use myself as an example. It was several years after I left that ad agency that I ever really told anybody my story of how that all came about. Because to the outsider, everyone was like, wow, Erin just left this really good job to open her own thing, and we're not really sure. Because I didn't see how that related. I was like, why would anyone care why I left this to do this? But then the first time I told it, everyone, it was a woman that I told it to, and she shared with me about 6 months later that it gave her the inspiration to explore her own business. She had never told anybody that she wasn't really happy what she was doing. And the fact that I could do that, so then I started realizing, wow, okay, these stories inspire, these stories motivate. So that set me on the path to find those stories in people, in clients, in friends, because that's what's key. So the second piece I'll say is that a lot of times people don't have the right, what they feel are the right words to tell their story. They don't have the language that they know they have a story. They know that it could make a difference, but they're afraid to share it because they are worried what people will think. They don't have the right words. That's where I come in. And that's where I truly feel at home, is when I help give people the words they need to tell their story. Because I believe that if you have a story that could positively impact one person, the world needs to hear it. So if that's how, it's through genuine listening and curiosity, and then crafting the language around someone's story, that I believe is the key to storytelling changing the world, changing lives.
Yeah, and I think we need other stories, inspiring stories, absolutely. Especially in this time right now where everybody is focusing on what is not working, where everything is going down, where systems are collapsing. This is important to have stories that are inspiring, that are motivating, that show that it is possible to change. And we don't have to be stuck in our routines where we are not happy, or where we feel we don't even belong there. Yeah. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so I would really ask my audience, if you feel that you have a story, please share it. Yeah, it's so important.
Yes, it's so important. Like it, and here's the thing: everyone has a story. So everyone, like your audience, if you're listening, you have a story. Sometimes it's buried, sometimes it's not obvious, but everyone has a story and something that they can teach other people, motivate, inspire other people for good. And there's nothing more powerful, I don't think, than sharing stories.
How do you help people that are either kind of afraid to share their stories, or feel that their stories are not important?
Well, I'm like the number one hype person. I can cheerlead anybody, but often what I find is that once we talk like this, in our initial meetings, I think people start understanding for themselves how important, because by asking the right questions, as they're telling me their story, I will ask questions to get to the heart of what's underneath. So using myself again as the example, if someone would had asked me, well, why did you leave your job? And I just left it at, oh, I wasn't happy, so I did something else. That's not the right question. The question should be, what were you feeling? What were you feeling when you were in that office that made it feel so closed in? What were the pieces about it that you didn't love? What was the aha moment that you realized, that this wasn't for you? Those are the kinds of questions when I meet with someone. And it doesn't have to be, stories don't have to be big, profound stories. We all have lots of them, but it's getting to the heart of the feeling and the emotion. I think that's the key for people tapping into their authentic story, is to peel the layers back of the onion. It goes beyond, I didn't like it, or I didn't like that person, or, if it's a story from your childhood, what was going on in your childhood at that moment? What was your relationship with your parents? What was your friend group like in your sporting? Getting into the emotions, because at the end of the day, as humans, it all comes back to feelings. And it's true when we tell our stories, we're connecting with other people at an emotional level, right? That's our goal. And when we share our stories, whether it's for personal or for business, we want our audience to connect. And that is not going to be found with logistics and systems and processes. That's going to be found at the human level. So that's what I do, is I get to the human level to help them see the importance of their own stories.
for me, of course, I have a story, no question, but I was a long time afraid of sharing this story because it was a feeling that I will be burned again, so to say.
Okay.
So I had a near-death experience when I was 8 years old, and since then I'm clairvoyant and precognitive. So I can really look beyond. I can see what is blocking people, not only in this lifetime, but also from the ancestral line and what is in their Akashic records, which are past life experiences. So for me, it was like totally normal, being woo-woo. And for other people, it was strange. Like they couldn't understand why I had wisdom that I couldn't have, why I could see things that would happen. And so, but sharing this story now is like, okay, in former times, I would end up in the fire. And now I'm brave enough to share that because I think this is important, because a lot of people have gifts that are suppressed or they don't use openly. They don't speak about that because they're afraid to be judged by the friends, the family, or by other people, especially now on social media. If you share this kind of things, there can be very wrong answers. Or they even are afraid there will be kind of danger, so to say. For me, it was this inner feeling that comes from, of course, past life, that I will be burnt again. So I think, how can we handle things like that if there is this kind of fear being rejected or judged with our story?
Well, and I think in your case too, one of the challenges or fears you probably had was, how do I maintain my expertise? Like I have a background in corporate. I have a lot of experience. I want to support people in a very practical, logical way. And I want to support them in this more spiritual woo-woo way. And so the fear might be the disconnect between those are two very different types of stories and messages. So blending, that's kind of where I come in with that piece I was saying about helping craft language that allows you to shine as the expert industry leader that you are and incorporate this added layer as a value add. You know, to me, you bring to the table so much more than just the corporate piece or just the experience that you had in that level. You're adding what other coaches, consultants, professionals can't add because of your experience at 8 years old. So that's the piece that I would help you overcome your fear in that. I would encourage you to see the value that you're adding by incorporating these stories, by sharing that story, by living authentically. Because like you said, this always came naturally for you and you kind of kept it down so that you could be taken seriously in the corporate world and, you know, women and men's world, especially a decade or two ago. I mean, these are all things that we have had to deal with. So I would encourage you to accept that fear, to really dig to what are the fears, and then approach it from how sharing this story and incorporating this into what you do adds value for your audience, for your clients. Because the more value you can add, the more impact you can make in the world, in your clients' lives, in your own life.
Yeah, and I think this is also something like what you said, being the expert, the USP, yeah, because everybody has an individual story, and this is once in a time. So there is nobody else who will have the same story. So this makes us unique, and with our life experiences and of course education. I'm also an engineer, so I have also the scientific background. So just to say, yes. So, but these kind of elements make it so special for everybody who can consider, okay, what are my personal skills? What are my experiences in life? What have I learned? And ask yourself, what are friends calling me for? Because often this is, people are not aware what other friends or neighbors or even other employees ask them for, because it comes so naturally. So I think this is kind of the blind spot. How can you bring
Absolutely. Absolutely. And bringing your stories together. Like you said, you know, you've got engineering, you've got corporate, you've got woo-woo, and how to not be afraid to blend them together to be the powerhouse that you are. You know, that's a superpower that's only you. You're the only person in the world that brings all of those elements the exact way you do. And that's true for every single person here.
Yeah. Another thing that would be interesting is, how do you find the words to speak to a certain kind of audience these people want to attract? So if we have an entrepreneur and now you figured out the story, but now it's like, okay, how can we describe the story, or how can we write down the story so that it becomes like a magnet for the audience? How are you doing this?
Well, the key first is to get really in tune, in touch with what audience you're wanting to talk to. So, you know, if you were trying to work with engineers, or if you were trying to work with, you know, only the woo-woo side of things, well, those are two very different target markets. So the first thing we would do is dial in who you're wanting to work with. So when you were introducing me and you said that I am currently working with speakers, business leaders, and service professionals. Okay, that's three very specific audiences. So I know that I need my story to resonate with those people, right? So for this current iteration of my business, I'm not speaking to health and wellness professionals, say. So I can zero my message in on my three. Then here's where the fun comes in. We take each of those groups and we look at their unique challenges. We want to get in their head. So if I'm looking at speakers, for example, what are the challenges that public speakers are having right now? Maybe it's finding speaking opportunities. Maybe it's writing a keynote speech. Maybe it's finding, they want to be on television. They want to be in the media, getting media coverage. Okay, so then I can start crafting my story to talk specifically to those challenges. So your message, anybody's message is not about you. It's not about the service you offer. It's not about anything. It's about your audience. So the way you share your story is completely dependent on the specific niche you're talking to. And the way you do that is by getting in their heads, coming up with their goals, desires, feelings. Again, you're connecting with your audience. You can have the best product or service, but if you're not connecting with them at a human level, doesn't matter. So what are they feeling? What do they want? What is their desire? What are their challenges right now? You know, that's pain point. And I'm not a fan of pain point marketing. But we need to address the challenges. And the challenges that a public speaker is having are likely very different than someone who has opened a yoga studio. And it's not that they don't both have incredible stories to share. And it's also not that both could not benefit from hearing my story, but I will share it in a different way to connect with them on a human level.
Yeah, so it's important to have a clear idea to whom you are speaking. So like having this kind of avatar that is, you know, if you imagine this person is sitting in front of you and you're speaking directly to this one person, and
give them a name. Like, I mean, we can call them a buyer persona. A lot of times we develop buyer personas. They can, you know, this is Kimberly. She's 42. She's, you know, she has a husband, but no children. Give them all these details. Write this in your brand foundation. You know, I'm a big proponent of having a brand foundation document to guide your business. But when you can then talk to Kimberly, when you craft your social media, when you write your blog posts, when you're writing a keynote speech, you can talk to Kimberly and structure all of your messaging around her. Picture a face. Sometimes go in Canva and pull a stock image. And then every time you're writing, you can picture Kimberly, you can picture, you know, Felipe, you can picture all of your different avatars. That's super helpful in your messaging, in sharing stories.
How can we then, if we have the story and an idea to whom we want to speak, use these stories? You already said speaking on stage, but I'm sure that this story will go into a different kind of, how can I say this in English? I don't know.
Your story can shape anything about your business. So yeah, you can share it on a stage, but you can also lead a workshop, a small group training. You can, maybe you're trying to target podcasts, and you can use that story to align, with the audiences you're looking to get in front of. In your social media captions, it's about connecting with the audience. So how can you share bits of your story and tie them into what you're doing for your business? I find that my story, not just the one I shared about how I came to this business, but my story shapes every piece of my business. My story influenced my core values, the family, freedom, and travel, which then influenced building a business that can be done from anywhere in the world, connecting with anyone in the world, which then allowed me to live in Europe, which was a goal for me. And so all of those pieces then structure and influence the clients I work with, the people I'm able to help. Our stories, when we get really in tune with them, they shape everything about our businesses. And the more we can share them, the better they're able to permeate everything.
Can you share some stories of your clients, not in detail, but to understand with whom you are working with? So like, who is coming to you and what are these kind of stories they are sharing?
Sure. Yeah, I've got all kinds of fun clients. So I have one client who climbed the corporate ladder until she was 50 years old. And she was very high up in a global company and reached burnout and was ready to do something else. And she left corporate to open her own career coaching business. So her story, she had things to get over, hurdles like who leaves a corporate job at 50 years old. I was taught that by 50, we are already looking toward retirement. And here I am building from scratch. What if no one wants to hire someone who's my age? All of these stories, putting language to that. I have another client who was originally from Brazil, who now lives in Spain, but for the 20 years in between, she worked in America. And now she has decided to open her own transitional coaching business. So she's trying to come up with language to talk about what she does. What does it mean to be a transitional coach? She works with people who are navigating life's big transitions. Maybe that's going from corporate to entrepreneur. Maybe that's going from single mother to empty nester. Maybe that's going from I've always wanted to travel abroad to living an expat lifestyle. And she supports people during that, but she didn't know that she could be that. We came up with that. Transitional mentor and consultant is her title. She didn't even know that that was a thing. I have one client, he is a fractional COO, and he's writing a book because he has developed his own system of how to build systems, processes, order in his clients' businesses. And so now that he has his system, he wants to share it with the world in a very big way. And so we are working together to write his book. So everything from the outline to the chapters to interviewing people to be in the book. stories are everywhere, and everybody, it's both working with people's internal stories and helping them share their external stories.
Yeah,
I have amazing clients. I could go on forever.
yeah, but this is already showing that there's kind of no limits how to use this kind of stories.
No
And
limits.
yeah, and
No limits.
yeah, so and you said you're working internationally, so this means that even like no, me, you're hearing that I'm not native English and I'm sometimes struggling with the language. Sorry, but yeah, so even like someone from another country could come to you and tell the story, and especially as we don't have the precise words, or I don't have, so to say.
Well, and that's actually, you make a good point. That is actually, it has become one of my personal favorite niches that I'm working in. And I didn't target it, but by living abroad and working at this global level, I have found that a lot of people have found me where English is their second language. And they are often powerhouses, industry leaders, thought leaders in their native tongue. But they find when they go to translate it into English, or they're trying to make an impact with US clients, US companies, they're either worried they aren't coming across as their full authentic selves because they're so well spoken and well versed in their native tongue, but even though they have great English, they may not know that deep level of a very fine niche language. So helping them craft their message in English is really something that I am honored to do. The example I gave of the person who left corporate to then start her career coaching business, she is Swiss. So she is French, native French speaker, and an amazing, I mean, she English is wonderful for her, but she struggled to write monthly blogs and social media because she felt so limited that she couldn't make the same impact. So that feels really powerful to help people share their stories in a second language. And I have so much admiration for you and for people like you who are not only capable, but confident to work at this level in multiple languages. I think it's incredible. I was a Spanish major in college, my undergrad, so I can appreciate it, but I could never work in Spanish right now. And so I have so much admiration for you and for people who do.
Yeah, wow, thank you so much. And for me, it's like, yeah, just stepping in, like, no, try it, get better, and no, we only can learn it by doing. So it will only become natural for us to speak in another language when we practice. So
Yeah.
even though I'm still struggling, so but I'm doing it.
You're doing it. I can't tell you're struggling. And that's the beauty, is that the world can't tell you're struggling. So it's great.
Yeah. So when people now get interested to work with you, now, how can they reach out? Do you have a website, social media? Please share that. Where can people
Yeah.
whatever?
Yeah. So my website is Erin Thomas Communications.com. Just Erin Thomas Communications.com. On all social media, I am Erin Thomas. So you can find me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook. I am Erin Thomas. I am a children's book author. So I have my children's book is called Anything But Ordinary. It is for ages maybe 5 through 12. It's on Amazon. So would love anybody who has littles or is in a school system or a library system. That could be awesome. The other way, anyone who is looking to launch or grow their speaker brand, there's no more effective, faster, better way to get visible, credible, profitable than through public speaking. And the way that the world is right now, you don't have to travel. You can travel to do it, but Zoom and virtual meetings are a wonderful way to do public speaking. So I have a business partner, and together we created the Star Speaker Experience. And so that would be my biggest encouragement if anyone is looking to speak. starspeakerexperience.com. It has all the information, but it's a 30-day intense program where we create all of your assets, from your pitches, your press releases, your video, all of those things. And then we spend the month providing PR. We are pitching you, getting you booked for podcasts, speaking opportunities, televised interviews. It's really the most comprehensive speaker program on the market. So starspeakerexperience for that.com and Erin Thomas Communications.com. That's me.
Wow. I will put all the links in the show notes so that it is easy for people to just click there and reach out to you.
Oh, thanks.
So we will do that. And last but not least, is there anything that you would love to share that I didn't ask you?
Oh, you've done such a great job at asking all of my most passionate questions. No, I'll just reiterate that stories are what change the world. They are what move us forward. They are what breaks generational curses. They are what gives the next generation the foundation and the law that they need. So if you have a story, and you do, everyone does, if it can benefit one person, please share it. Start small if you need to, but just start talking about it. And if you need help with the language or the inspiration, I am here, and you are here, because we are both committed to inspiring people to share their stories.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for being my guest. It was a pleasure speaking with you. And
oh, this is great. Thank you so much for having me. It's so great talking with like-minded people like yourself, and with your audience, who it seems like are so passionate about stories the way we are.
Yeah. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Talk soon.
Thank you for listening or watching my podcast, Holistic Creators. If you want to know more about how I can help and support you, have a look at my website, spiritualchangemaker.com. You can also join my Facebook group, Spiritual Changemakers Community. Stay tuned for the next episode by subscribing to this channel. And you also can check the previous episodes.